Welcome to the She Force Show. I'm Amy Carlson, your host, and today I have my special guest, Jeslen Mishelle. Welcome.
Ball
Woohoo.
bounce. Excited bounce.
Are you on a ball too?
Yeah, you too.
Yeah. So, for our viewers, you may be noticing that we may be bouncing a little bit. For those listening in on the podcast, you won't even know.
But we're bouncing.
That's right. So welcome. And I'd just love to kick it off, Jeslen, by asking, so you can tell the audience what it is you do and how you got into it.
Okay. Well, first, I'd like to say thank you for even having me on this. I'm so glad that I met you at that retreat that Nicole had. It was so beautiful. And getting to talk with you and connect with you and the other women, you just have something very special and unique. And I am honored to be on the show because I feel like I could be myself and share, and you would actually understand more so than some other things I'm involved with, where I feel like I might have to play a certain role with these other things or other interviews that I might have. Yeah. So I'm excited too. So to your question, my name is Jeslen Mishelle. That is my birth name. And currently I'm a professional mixed martial artist. I fight MMA. Some people might not know what that is. That's fighting in the cage in various art form styles of fighting, combat. And I get punched in training a lot. So don't mind the black eye. It was a lot worse.
And so how did you get started in that?
Oh yeah, that part. So I train with elite athletes. I'm here in Las Vegas training at the top gym. People come from around the world to train there. The coaching is top notch. The talent and the athleticism is just through the roof. Like, it's pushing me to be so much better. But all these fighters have wanted to be fighters their whole lives. Like, they remember seeing something when they were young and they're like driven to do that, or they did boxing growing up or karate. I did nothing. I don't know how I got into it, honestly, is the initial answer. It just kind of evolved into it. And because I'm here, it's changed me in so many positive ways, because through finding jujitsu first, and then 1 year later, my first amateur MMA fight, I learned what self-discipline was. So that's changed my life. Like, I didn't know that you needed that. I was an athlete as a child, but I was always naturally good enough that I didn't really try, or I didn't have a lot of competition in a small town that I grew up in. And I did make it to junior Olympic levels as a youth. And I realized that's when I didn't like it, because I had to try harder and train harder. I didn't want that. I just didn't have the love for it. Yeah. Nonetheless, what I did have the love for was performing and performance. And as a kid, I did theater and talent shows and gymnastics. But my dad loved sports, so he wanted me to do sports. And just like all parents, we always want the best for our kids. But I realized he never asked me what I really liked, and I probably didn't know either. But later, I realized I didn't like sports and I wanted to entertain. So when I didn't end up going to college to play basketball, I went back to the mountains and taught snowboarding and snowboarded. That's my home. So I just was trying to assess life. I got in trouble. I was arrested. There's a lot more detail in all these stories, by the way. We can touch base, but I'll give it an overview as quick as I can, concisely as I can. And then I found myself moving to, where did I go first? Sacramento. And I took myself to circus school, learned some aerial and stilt walking, and just started doing these performance art things, which included dancing. And that's what I really liked. And I thought maybe I could do something like that, but that's a really tough industry, especially if you're not classically or formally trained or had gone to school for it. So just to keep trying to keep this long story consolidated, I went to a venue that I had to perform at one night, and that particular night I was there, they had pro wrestling. And I said, this is everything that I've done. It's performance, it's theater, it's acting, it's these costumes, it's stunts, and it's these fighting moves, but you're not really. And so I said I would do that. which I did. Then while I was doing that and training, and by the way, I've gone around the world doing pro wrestling, I thought towards the beginning of the pro wrestling training that I should maybe learn something real or legit. So I stumbled in on a jujitsu gym, got my neck choked left and right by tiny women, didn't understand how that happened since I was big and athletic, and was hooked. Being at that gym, they said, "Do you want to do an MMA fight?" I'm like, "Not for real. I don't really want to get punched in the face, but I'll try it." And the fear I had in that first fight is what kept me going. So I just found myself moving to Las Vegas and going to a gym, thinking I'd do more pro wrestling, but then COVID kind of slowed that down, and I kept training for fighting, and I became a professional last year with a big company called PFL. So yeah, so it just kind of transpired. Does that make any sense? That's
Oh, yeah. Well, I love stories like this. I mean, I think for most of us, it's not just a linear line.
Yeah.
And hearing about the zigs and the zags, or the things that we sometimes think like, oh, did I get off track there?
Yeah.
It's all part of the big picture, and hearing you describe those elements, what you loved about each of those things. And then when you came across, when you saw it in action, you're like, that's what it is for me.
Yeah.
But then also hearing how it dropped back in, like, so when you were a kid, you weren't necessarily interested in when something got super challenging.
Yeah.
But then as an adult, you're like, maybe that's the very thing that I'm after.
The challenge.
The challenge.
Well, then I think that is a thing. I don't think I ever retreated from challenge even as a kid. I just didn't have the love to want to pursue it. I just didn't want to. For whatever reason, I found this love. And I think it's because what it's done for me mentally and physically that I am willing to endure.
Willing to endure. Yeah. And there's so many little pieces I could pick up on right from here.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to, one of the places I want to go from here is, how have you seen your confidence evolve on this path?
Gosh, I have to tell you, I learned from pro wrestling as a grown adult that I didn't have confidence. I had a lot of self-esteem, but confidence was a lot different. And I think with pro wrestling, it's because it was kind of new to me. I didn't watch it growing up, so it was brand new art form. I mean, there had to have been some kind of confidence in order to just step in there and be in front of people. But that's what I realized. I think because I lacked confidence, let me rewind. When I was growing up and I was an excellent athlete and I was a smart student, my parents taught me to be humble and not brag and not boast and not praise myself. And honestly, they didn't praise me either. So I was like, okay, that's how you have to be, just be subdued and don't make other people feel bad by shining too bright. I practiced that my whole life of like dimming down to not intimidate or make other people feel bad. But because of doing that, that made the confidence not grow. That did the reverse effect. Instead of making me humble, it made me like not sure of myself, just because those are the emotions you're practicing. Just, when a kid does something good or a child does something well, you want to build that up and praise it. And my parents didn't know this. They thought they were doing the right thing by not letting me get a big head. But when someone would compliment their kid or say good things, my dad would downplay it and be like, "Oh, well, she's not a fast runner. She just gets over the hurdles pretty smooth," just downplaying it. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, "Oh, okay, I guess I'm not a fast runner." Like, things like that affects you. And he's the greatest father ever. I mean, we're so close, so I don't mean to, but parents don't realize the way it affects a kid. So I learned that I lacked confidence just because I would always downplay everything. And when you downplay everything, you never really feel confident about anything. So in pro wrestling, it was the opposite. You have to become a character that's you, but magnified. And then you literally tell the audience who you are and how you want them to think of you. You can make that your slogan. I am the greatest you've ever seen and you're going to love me. And they, just say that's like normal. You have to say those things. And so I had a hard time with that. So I'm like, this is me saying it. It's not me acting or doing a play or being a character for an independent film like I often was. I'm okay with that because it's not really me. I can be cocky and bombastic because it's not really me. I don't want people to think that of me.
Yeah.
But in pro wrestling, it was supposed to be just a magnified version of you, but you had to be that or you'd be boring. And I'm quite thankful for pro wrestling to point that out to me. And then when I found the jujitsu and I saw how smooth and easy it was to use a body and manipulate bodies, for some reason, something just clicked. And I think that started my relationship with my body. And I think that's where my confidence started growing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, I had a teammate. I was like, oh, my body did that. And then the more I treat it well and the more I give to it and show it, practice it, the more it's doing.
Let's talk more about that. I love that. So learning confidence in one way through body.
Yeah.
I just think that's sacred. And I think so often we are, as grownups, we just like, we separate from our body.
Yeah.
So often. And, like for kids, they are their bodies.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
So in touch with it. Like, oh, they fell down, had a boo-boo. I'm like, no, we're not going to lament over a little tiny boo-boo, but they're, it's a big thing. It's right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder why we lose that. I think when we get older, we start thinking of our bodies having to be a certain way due to societal accepting.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where we start disassociating that maybe it's not good enough, or I don't know.
Yeah. And then so much of what we do as adults seems to be in our head.
Uh-huh.
But then, where I work with people too, with health and fitness, people are wanting to make that connection again because they want to feel healthy.
Right.
Yeah. So tell me more about your journey then through jujitsu with your body, resulting in more confidence.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, I'd always been athletic, so I'd always worked out at the gym or ran or went jogging, or I always loved hiking, but to me, that's not working out. That's being in nature, totally different. I could probably do anything in nature that required trail making. I do with my best friend, Matthew, and we're sweating our butts off, but I don't even notice.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I've always enjoyed the workout, but with jujitsu, it's such a mental thing. And that's why they call it chess. Ultimately, when you get really good at it, it's like playing chess because you'll move a certain way to have the other person react a certain way that you already intended for them to react, and then you can attack them from there. And you could do that steps and steps and steps ahead, like a chess game, which I'm not good at. I'm better at checkers. So I'm still like one step, oh, they're reacting, one step and move, it's like a back and forth thing. But jiu-jitsu has that element of it. And so it requires a lot of mental aptitude. And when it starts clicking, you start seeing, okay, when I do this, this happens. When I do this and this happens. And then I could do this. And then they will do this. And then I could do this and this. And it's just like, wow, that's in my mind. And I know that, but my body is also doing it. So that mind-body connection is what did it for me, I think. I never had that shooting a bass. I mean, maybe they have it in other sports. Maybe other athletes have felt that in other sports. It just not for me. It wasn't for me. I'm sure they've had it in other sports, but I think everybody will resonate with something different. So then it's like any relationship. When you start getting to know the other, then you get more comfortable and then things open up. So when I felt separate from my mind and my body, and they were getting to know each other, and I was watching them operate. It it's taken years. It's been about 7 years now, but being fully aware, almost to such an extent that I might maybe kind of a hypochondriac, like, oh, what's this mean? Why is my muscle twitching? Oh no. But
you're so aware.
yeah, but this is going to get so into it. We can get there later because there's still some to talk about before we get to what I'm gonna say right now, which is the body keeps a score. So I endured injuries, and I learned that these injuries were a lot of repressed emotions and ancestral traumas that were stored in my body. So that's taken years to get there, and it's taken a lot of therapies, various types, to get there too.
Good for you for being brave and courageous to go there.
Well, man, it's quite something, and we can talk about that. I just didn't want to jump too far to more recent because that's only been in the last couple of years. But as far as at the beginning, really understanding that my mind and body can work as a team, and then I can be the one in charge, the supervisor, then yeah, I think that's really where I got hooked. And I'll never forget. I'm not saying everybody should go to fight because not everyone will enjoy getting hit in the face. But I'll never forget one boxing coach said, well, you're not scared to get hit. And that's something I can't teach people. It's either there or not. Yeah. And for some reason, as you can see, I get hit. I had 2 black eyes. It was really beautiful. It's purple eyeshadow on my eyelids for a week.
Well, that must be, so even though you're like not necessarily afraid to get hit, that I'm just guessing that there's something there that some part of you has overcome some fear.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I get people to ask me, or especially if they're out and about or strangers, and they'll be like, oh, you fight, and then they'll say, oh, was there some kind of trauma that you had as a kid? You have to prove yourself, or whatever they might want to say. And I put a story up kind of recently about that. I'm like, if something happened to me as a child and this is my way of dealing with it, and I have to feel tough and courageous and beat someone up to feel better, let it be. So be it. That's my therapy. Then that's fine. And if that's anybody else's reasoning, let them do it. It's better than drinking at the bar every night, or like beating the children, or who knows what people are doing, gambling their money away. Like that's not as frowned upon, especially around Vegas. I'm like, that's probably the worst thing I can think of, is being uncontrollably losing your money in a slot machine. That's not meaning to judge, because a lot of people have a good time doing it too. But so let them do it. They have a good time. Let people be who they are for whatever reason they're doing it. But I really don't think that is my reason. Like, or someone said daddy issues, something. I guess we all have parenting issues. No parent's perfect. And as I mentioned, my dad, but I knew he came from love. His whole purpose was loving, and he was always there for me. So it's not the daddy issues. I could have someone there and had to hate all men for it, want to beat people up. It wasn't it at all. Honestly, I just feel like it was scary. That first amateur fight I ever had, leading up to it, was the most scared I ever felt in my life. Yeah. To this very day, I never felt more scared. I was cutting promos. So in pro wrestling, we have promos where we talk to the camera and talk. Did you ever watch pro wrestling?
Yeah.
So you see all the macho man and the wrestlers talking to the camera. I wish I could recite it. I'm a terrible pro wrestling fan right now. But I was doing that in my head about the actual fight, about a real person.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, the butterfly tattoo. You think your butterfly tattoo is gonna, like, it was like the most ridiculous thing. And I'm like, I've never seen this side of me. I'm really scared. It
Yeah.
ended up being the most boring fight in the world that I won. I won it in like less than 2 minutes. But
Wow.
but that fear
Yeah.
hooked me.
Yeah.
That was it. So I truly think that if you know anything about me, I like doing things that people say create adrenaline. And I like scary things. I like being scared. And I've never been that scared. So I'm like, I like this. So that was my reasoning, honestly. And then now with fighting similar to jujitsu, now I'm learning that the cause and effect, like if someone has something on me, there's an answer to escaping it, or there's a way to overcome it. Or if someone's doing, it has me in a hold, or is like getting me really good with punches, there's an answer, and I just have to find the answers. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I love that. There's an answer.
Yeah, to every challenge. And so it's
Yeah.
just a little metaphor.
Yeah. Well, that's a mindset. There's an
Yeah,
answer.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's great coaches over there. So I will ask them afterwards. I'm like, why am I getting stuck here? How are you? So how is he subduing my arm and this arm while punching me when I'm on top? Like how am I doing that?
So your curiosity really drives you too. And that
No.
wanting to improve, or you see something and you know it could be different. And so, you ask for help. What do your coaches see? What's going on here? What am I missing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, and I guess that's what any coaching and all coaching is good for, just different areas. Like you're going to make mistakes and you're going to get punched. You're metaphorically speaking, you're going to get choked out or held down. But there is an answer because not everybody has those things happen to them, maybe on their way up, but there's always a an answer that's going to save you and get out of that. You just have to take the time to learn it. That's what coaches do.
Exactly. And before we hit the record button, we were talking about being okay with asking for what you want, even if somebody else doesn't understand.
Yeah. What was the topic we were on when I mentioned that?
Well, it was just, I think you were getting your camera set up and everything.
Oh, yeah, my angle. You probably
Yeah.
didn't even notice that it was different. And you're like, if it makes you feel better, then that's good. Um, yeah, and I think fighting has helped me with that for sure. Um, Especially when I have fights coming up and I need to ask coaches for time or advice. At first, especially at the other gym, I I kind of allowed myself to feel that I wasn't important enough to ask, that they were busy or I wasn't good enough. I'm too new. I was an amateur. They don't have time to like show me. And I'm like, you have to ask. There's no other way to learn and grow. And if a coach is going to treat you like that, that's on them. That's why I left gyms, switched.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah, so just the little things. I do have a friend that's kind of like, oh, whatever you want. Oh, this is fine. I'm like, what do you want? What makes you feel better? Oh, I'll be fine anyway. I'm like, I know you'll be fine anyway. You're a wonderful person. You're adaptable. But what would make you feel the best? Like, and my particular friend has such a hard time with that.
yeah.
It's kind of, I don't know. I hope I can guide guide him into just it's okay to get what you want
Yes.
or try.
To know what you want. Like step
That's
one is to, yeah.
That's step exactly. That's actually what else I had told him. I was like, what do you want? What do you want? Oh, I don't know. Like you have to know whether it's what you want to eat or where do you want to live in 5 years? Like there's ideas. And I guess that's the first step. And I wonder if some people just don't think ahead at a big picture. I'm a big picture thinker. Like I like,
Yeah. Me too.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I've realized not many are.
And I think it could go back to partly what you were talking about earlier too, about being humble. And sometimes, I think a lot of us sort of grew up that way too, like don't call too much attention to yourself and so we get this idea that maybe we shouldn't, you know, be too needy or have these strong desires or whatever. Um, and I don't think that's the case.
Yeah. So that was, I think, a lot of, I don't see children so much being told those things now. More so now they're getting extra praised for maybe doing even less.
Yeah.
But I don't have kids and I'm not around too many nowadays. So I'm not fully aware, but I did help my friend Roxy teach kids jujitsu for a few years. I was her assistant. But yeah, it was a really big thing back then, or where children had to know their place and they couldn't be expressive. They couldn't ask for things, toys or whatever. Um, yeah, yeah. I hope my friend, if he asks anybody, he should ask me.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think along with that, earlier we were also talking before we started the recording
Yeah.
about people pleasing.
Yes,
And I
yes.
think there's some tie with all of this together, just in my own experience
Mhm.
about, so yeah, where are you in the people pleasing phase now?
Yeah, and I recognize this. I don't mean to talk about my friend badly by any means, wonderful person, but I recognize these things in him because I recently discovered that they were in me and I've been working on it. One of them is people pleasing, and that exactly it has something to do with the same thing where, oh, wherever you want, or whatever what do you like? Like I asked you, like, or I'd say, do you want to come over? Do you want me to? Why would I ask you if I didn't?
Yeah.
So I had that kind of thing going on before, and I it was back, maybe I was doing a lot of modeling and fashion shows, and I was busy all the time, and I was like so busy, and it made me feel important because on a different topic, I also realized that I never felt important as a kid either. That's why I was never important enough to ask the coach for extra help. Um, and so the busyness made me feel important. But really, I just was terrible at time management and I was saying yes to too many things to please other people. So that had to end. And I didn't realize that I was trying to please other people. It was more like I wanted to help them or like be there for them. But it's like, how could I be there for them when I'm spread so thin? I'm doing a half-assed job.
Yeah.
So that definitely was something that I had to learn. And probably in the last year, I say no, or I say I can't, or right now I have a lot of other stuff going on and have a fight coming up. And this person that I used to wrestle with contacted me out of nowhere. And so when my fiance and I broke up, he was mad. He was kind of like our son, like he threw a little tantrum that we were breaking up and he didn't like that. And I thought that was sweet because it, was sad, but he took his side and then he started telling him secrets about me. Not that I had any, but just things that I'm like, why would you say that? Because that's gonna hurt him. If I'm dating someone else after we broke up, he doesn't need to know. Like it's just silly. So I just cut him loose, right? Anyhow, he contacts me out of nowhere and like asks me to talk with him. And this is where I finally set boundaries and not try to please people. I'm like, I wish you the best. I know you'll pull through, but I can't, I don't know what you're going through and I can't engage in your energies with all this strange time that's gone by and that what I'm trying to do right now. Like it's going to drain me and it's going to drain me for tomorrow, what I'm obligated and committed to do. So that was a big deal for me, honestly. I never, like, I would normally just be like, oh, they need me. Someone is, I've
Yeah.
never said no. I've never said no to something like that. So that just happened maybe a couple days ago, and it was a new side of me that I never saw.
Yeah. And it left an impression for you.
It did already.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was sad that we lost our like friendship anyway, but we, what can I do? This isn't the way to regain it.
And as you were telling that story, what I saw in my mind's eye, I was you doing jujitsu.
Mhm.
And as you were describing jujitsu earlier about, this sort of interaction between the two people, right? And
Yeah,
sort of anticipating, and I have not done jujitsu, but having watched it, it feels like a very energetic, like energetically aware.
yeah,
And I feel like in that conversation you just mentioned, where you said no, that almost it was like something you may have learned from jujitsu, that your reaction to, it
a
was just
move.
almost like a leaning away instead of leaning in.
Yeah, because that would open up something else that might create something else because stuff wasn't handled or healed. And I hope that it is at some point, but it's right now I can't. Right now I can't. So
Yeah.
yeah, in jujitsu interaction, I see them do a move and I could either attack that or I could retreat and like reset.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I like that you saw that. It's definitely a metaphor in that way. You could choose to engage or not, but there are risks either way, but definitely with engagement. But there's also rewards. So you kind of have to assess all that.
So this awareness. So this awareness of people pleasing, which I know that you and we could probably talk for hours about this, and I am most certain that people listening could definitely relate.
Yeah.
And then also that piece about being willing to know what you want,
Mhm.
ask for what you want, go for it.
And then say no when it's not what you want.
Yeah, because that's fair too. You may get what you think you want and then realize it's not what you want, and it's okay to say no.
Yeah. And it's okay to say no. That's I think what a lot of people have a problem with because they don't want to hurt the other person or make them feel bad. But yeah, that's been kind of a new strong thing for me, especially on social media. People contact you and you want to engage and be thankful for their support and encouragement. And if they're a fan of, they say they're fans of my fighting or pro wrestling, whatever it is, and I want to, but it's also very time consuming. And, I'll answer a question or two, but then if I don't respond right away, they'll get mad, like, oh, well, you can just block me. I'm like, I just didn't get back to you in a couple hours.
Yeah.
Like, so that's kind of challenging too, but that's when you just make the choice. Okay, I'm either going to engage or not. I could ignore you completely, which will save those emotions to them, or make the choice to take the time to do it. But it social media is a whole nother monster.
It really is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what's next for you, Jeslen? What are you feeling pulled to in the future?
I know because obviously the fighting is not going to be a long career, and I started much later in my life, in my 30s, and became a professional athlete in my 30s, which no one would ever think to, and I, especially not having any experience. Uh, so I'm kind of at the point where whatever I do with it, which is great, I still need to have a plan for afterwards. And I've been reading, I listened to Florence Scovel. Have you ever heard of her?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I was listening to her audiobooks, but my best friend Sarah gave me the book, and I just been reading all four of them. And she says infinite intelligence, give me a definite lead on blah, 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 blah. And so I've just been doing that in addition to all my other practices. And I asked about what to do about after the fighting. And immediately my dad called and started telling me about what he has already expressed to my mother and I. So my mother and I put on presentations for a lot of Native youth camps. And we talk about bullying or healthy relationships. And I'm doing one next weekend where I'm going to incorporate self-defense. And especially for the girls on the reservation, we don't have a lot. And I always say this, I'm like, none of those girls in the cage are going to hit me harder than the Native girls did growing up. So it just like happened like that too, after I asked. And then my father called and he was just very excited that she and I are going to be doing this, and that he's always been supportive of us doing that, because we do work well together. My mom's really funny and goofy and like out extroverted, and I'm a little more reserved, and I do the administrative side of things. And yeah, it's just, we're a good little opposing match. And so I do know that that's a big thing that she and I are going to do, because she should retire anyway. And then she and I could just create these presentations and travel the various tribes who host workshops and events all the time. So we would be in demand.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited about that. And I've always known that I needed to give back. And I always felt like I wasn't good enough in my jujitsu or fighting to teach someone else, but I know I could show them so much. Now that confidence finally came, and I know that I could offer enough to teach them, to at least change their mind or open their eyes, open their mind, and maybe seek it in the future, or just feel better about themselves. Because with self-defense, in my opinion, the first line of defense is not looking like a victim and carrying an air of confidence so that you don't look like an easy target. And just training alone, even if you don't know the moves, but just getting in there and moving your body makes you inevitably have that. So I know I can offer that.
Yeah, that is awesome. I love it. What great. I can see that happening. What a great thing for you and your mom to do together. Fits with your big vision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a big vision. And in the meantime, I still participate in like this weekend we have an event. My friend has this, it's like a women empowerment where she has athletes and they fight each other, but they're also dancers and showman type girls. Maybe some are showgirls, I don't know, but they do use grappling and jiu-jitsu, but it's like more of a variety show.
Yeah.
And I'm the host, and I walk on my stilts and commentate. So I'll always have things like that kind of on the side, because that's, the arts and performance arts is my love. But can I tell you my big dream?
Yes, of course.
Since I moved to Las Vegas, coming and home being the mountains of California, I have had a challenging time with the heat or even the cold. It's just like, it's not a cold I ever had in the snow back home. But the heat is dreadful. The animals can't go outside. Nobody can go outside. At 6 a.m. before the sun rises, the sidewalk is still too hot to stand on. It never cools off. It's 100 degrees overnight. And I just find that to be like imprisonment if you cannot go outside.
Yeah.
So I fantasize and I dream of this huge geodome that's environmentally controlled, environmentally green, with renewable resources, ran by renewable resources, with a pond and a waterfall and trees and trails and grassy areas, but it's temperature regulated and it's indoors. So any time of year you could go in there. It would be a venue. It could be a wedding venue. They could host concerts and other events, or it's just a giant park for you to walk your dog off leash, because I believe dogs should be off leash. It's just my thing. You just have to train them.
Yeah.
And they can even swim. There's nowhere to take your animal to swim in the water unless you drive an hour around here. So that's my big dream, is having an indoor for people to be outdoors in.
I love that. And then once you get that done there, then we need to do more of them. Cause I know like in Montana, yeah, we could use that too, because the weather extremes are just,
Yeah, it gets
yeah,
hot or very cold there.
yeah,
Hot too?
yeah. Hot too.
No
Yep.
way. My dad said,
110 sometimes.
I didn't know that about Montana.
Yeah.
My dad said that too. He said, yeah, you could have like a big chain, like a whole company and put some in
Yeah.
Palm Springs because it's really hot over there and people can't go outside there. Wherever people need to go outside and can't.
Yeah.
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 Or ride their
And
bike.
still gather together. You know, I think that's the thing too. When the weather extremes happen, we don't get together as often with other people. And then
Yeah.
there's that whole
We're
thing too.
isolated in our air conditioned houses or little
Mhm.
cubicles. Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly because we can't have anything outdoors for 4 months or more here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that.
That's down the road. I
Yahoo.
go, there's a spot in the desert near a park I like, and I actually buried my dog on a little hill nearby. But I would take the dogs, and even the cats there, and I meditate there. And
Yeah.
then I could see the dome in the distance.
That's
So
how it all begins.
yeah, hopefully.
Oh,
No,
I
it
love
will.
it. It will. It will. Well, Jesselyn, it has been such a pleasure visiting and hearing how all the pieces have connected and are coming together and continue to come together in your own life. And I just think your own unique story, is so inspirational. So I'm so glad we could get together and do this. And I just want to tell the audience, I always say, take a nugget, at least one that really struck you today, and then act on it today, whatever that means, so that the transformation begins.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know your listeners will definitely receive nuggets and treasures from everything you do.
Oh, well, thank you. And everything you do, again, just an honor to know you, an honor to get to spend time with you, and your big heart and your big vision.
Thank you. And you too. That's
Oh,
why you recognize it.
thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Talk soon.